the piece that I'm starting with, a broken statue. So this essay is called "Have You Seen This Broken Statue?" And it starts with a quote from Amy Benson: "Whatever your eyes take is yours." So the marble statue of a fighting Gaul, I'll pass that around, is in the sunny Roman sculpture court at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And for the past few months, I've been monopolizing the bench behind it every couple of weeks. I think about it when I'm not there like I have a crush on it. It's now even the wallpaper on my phone. Only fragments of the body remain, and sometimes I look at this statue so hard that when I re-enter the city, it's as if I'm seeing through a filter, Gaul-tinted glasses. I see him in a tree stump, a broken mannequin, a ripped subway poster that cuts the legs off of a model. The fighting Gaul is what's left of a statue of one of the barbarian enemies that the Romans faced on their borders during the late 3rd or early 2nd century BC. After defeating them, Roman artists often represented their enemies in the nude or in vulnerable poses, but this one is different. For as much as we can tell from these pieces, he remains in an attacking stance, not yet defeated. But now defeated by time, he's lost everything from the waist up, and he's missing his back foot. His front foot remains still attached to the original base, and an anachronistic metal pole reunites it with his knee. The back leg is supported by another pole, which disappears into a modern platform made level with the front ancient marble. My warrior has one foot in the past and one in the present. Historians think that the original may have included an opponent. They faced each other on the same marble plinth, a common base. Despite all that's missing, or maybe because of all that's missing, the fighting Gaul seems whole to me. Maybe I like him better broken, though I know him no other way. His severed waist shows the rough and grainy marble inside, in contrast with the smooth surface and its carefully articulated details, wrinkles in his pants, the tiny knots on his sandals, and a chain belt just below the break. I might not have noticed these things if there were a torso, shoulders, a face. I teach writing to art students, and I often tell my students to forget about time and intention just for a moment. I call it a context game. Try to ignore the information plaques and focus on what's in front of you. In what other contexts, besides the art's own internal history, can we place it? I write the words of critic Sylvan Barnett on the chalkboard. Art ought to enlarge feelings, not merely confirm them, he says. So how to make space for these new feelings? It's important to understand a work of art in terms of its own origins, but let's not forget to ask what the object is doing to us here and now in front of our modern eyes. We can amend history without erasing it. When I play the context game with myself, I find the pose in my own body. Here's me doing yoga in front of the Gaul. I'll pass that out. Well, the warrior pose in these same shoes. So, I find the pose in my own body. Here's my yoga teacher touching my knee as she walks past me. Move your foot forward so that your thigh is almost parallel to the floor, she says. I imagine that this statue's metal poles are not there to repair the original, but they have revised it. The shape of the body I see now is what was always intended. I pretend that the artist is one of the early surrealists, someone like Dali building a collage that fuses the ancient with the contemporary world. What's missing from the fighting Gaul is exactly what makes so much space for the imagination. His torso could have been made of anything. Imagine the arms as once tentacles. Imagine that his head was a living performance made of birds. Now they have a new life somewhere, maybe in another piece of art. I imagine them across town in MoMA's collection, caught in Joseph Cornell's boxes. And here's Dali and Cornell pieces. I keep reframing. The Gaul is still a warrior, but today his injuries look like those of modern war caused by landmines or shrapnel. He's one of the men my father knew when he fought in Vietnam, who he now sees at the VA. I imagine the shock right after limb loss. The soldier comes home. Someone who loves him is advocating for him on the phone with the insurance company, printing out studies on prosthetics for reading in bed. It's what they can do while he learns the new map of his body. There's physical therapy to learn to stand, maybe someday achieve this warrior's pose. I want to picture the real moments of recovery, but of course I cannot know his. I stood in front of the Gall on the weekend of the Charlottesville riots, which were ignited over the removal of a Confederate monument. In light of the issues on my mind that day, the Gall became an image of brokenness in the middle of our broken country. Right-wing protesters, along with our president, continue to argue that we must preserve our history, but the preservation they call for privileges certain histories over others and dismisses how these monuments speak to the present communities that surround them. How can we make space for today's enlarged feelings with the scope of a particularly modern white supremacy raging through these neighborhoods? Is there a way to reframe the monuments without removing them? Can we only make space if they are absent? But these feelings, the injury of white supremacy, of course, is not so new. A response to my questions, months later I'd visit Doreen Garner and Kenya Robinson's exhibit White Man on a Pedestal, in which Garner created a replica of a statue of J. Marion Sims, the 19th century father of gynecology. The monument to Sims is still holding court in Central Park, along with a plaque that refers to him as both a surgeon and a philanthropist. This tribute overlooks that Sims performed gynecological exams and experimental surgeries on enslaved women, often without amnesia or consent. Garner's statue shows Sims in a silicone cast to be dissected in an operating theater installed in Brooklyn's Pioneer Works. Meat sculptures surround him, including the severed leg of a white male. The skin on one side is ripped away down to the bottom of his foot, revealing red, fleshy muscle made of cereal and beads. It is grotesque and bloody, but still sparkles under surgical lights. So here's some images from that show. The leg. When a wound becomes a metaphor, race, gender, and class inspire very distinct significations. In the room around the fighting Gaul are goddesses, and my context game is different in front of them. It is harder for me to pretend that broken statues of women are outside of time and injury. While I can shift my focus to pretend that the ancient male warrior is an intentional representation of something modern, I can't help but think about what a female statue endured. Was her marble breast cracked during an earthquake? Was it only the weather? Or were there teenage vandals? Were there older drunk men trying to flaunt their sexual bravado, conquering a flawless woman by defacing her? An armless woman can't resist. A headless nude is sex without consequences. No mind, no mouth, and no eyes. Aristotle saw the female as a deformed male. The strength of a man lies in commanding and a woman's in obeying. Women are impulsive, he thought, and more prone to tears. Matter yearns for form, he wrote, as the female for the male and the ugly for the beautiful. Did he ever see that tears, feminine tears, girly tears, maybe ugly tears, could mean strength? A broken form of a woman, such as, let's say, the Venus de Milo, still represents beauty, not disability. She is wounded but persists in her elegant pose, and this is all we see. In his essay, Nude Venuses, Medusa's Body, and Phantom Limbs, disability studies scholar Leonard J. Davis writes of an amnesia in the face of mutilation. This looking away from incompleteness, he writes, is the tip of a defensive mechanism that allows the art historian still to see the statue as an object of desire. The critic's aim is to restore the damage. Rather than as an object of desire, can we face the broken Venus as a representation of recovery? Can she be both? Some might see the goddess's gaze as serene, but to consider her in a new wholeness, perhaps it is a look of annoyance. She is tired of us overlooking her scars and the journey of her recovery. Face me and love me for who I am, for what I am. A response. British artist Mark Quinn's Alison Lapper, Pregnant, resembles the limbless statues that we revere so much, but this one depicts a woman who was born this way. It was erected in Trafalgar Square in 2005. So here it is, it's huge. among statues of lions and military men. Lapper was born without arms and with shortened legs. She posed for Quinn when she was 7 months pregnant. As an artist herself, she was involved in the direction of this statue and made sure the depiction was not of pity. I never heard anybody say the Venus de Milo is disabled, she said in an interview with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And yet if you look at my shoulders and at hers, we're very much the same. Why is it we can look at a sculpture that people think is beautiful, but nobody ever looks at disability in the same light? Venus, Lapper, and Garner further alter my gall-tinted gaze. Oh, I have another picture of Alison Lapper. When I'm walking, I look for images of dismemberment, cracks in the sidewalk, a table leg. The high school version of myself liked to take pictures of my feet. Then I only stood my body in pieces. I wanted to cut away the parts that were new and unfamiliar. New breasts, new thighs, strange shapes. Today I keep the pictures of street fragments in a folder on my phone called Severances. I have an Instagram account now too. What if I told you I thought that they were comforting? If broken things linger long enough, they grow into their new shape, find a new function. They become the face of the city itself, and we forget that they once had another life. People pick at the plastered posters on subway station walls, revealing layers of old advertisements underneath. The resulting collages are sometimes uncanny. The mouth torn off of Kevin James' face reveals Yayoi Kusama's dots underneath. I saw the letters in an action movie title rearranged to say Ferguson right after Michael Brown was killed there by police. I want to bring time backwards. I want to bring time backwards to even before the fighting Gaul was a body. Catch the fragments in the moments of their creation instead of their destruction. Maybe the artist started with the front foot, the foot we still have here today, and went on from there. These are the pieces long before the possibility of brokenness or even completeness. Here in front of me is that impulse to make something out of nothing. The artist starts with a hunch, create. There are warriors in the marble. Thank you.